Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command. Or we could say Space Command, or however you like it. I hope you've been enjoying the 1984 marathon we've been presenting of radio and TV versions and even a film version, the Edmund O'Brien version. One thing we haven't mentioned, of course, is the enormous impact that 1984 had on later dystopic science fiction. Obviously, it was a huge influence on books like Fahrenheit 451 and movies like THX 1138, and continues to this day. Every dystopic or totalitarian piece of science fiction, 1984 is sort of a core text that almost everyone has read or knows about or seen one of these versions of. So this is the final installment of our 1984 marathon, and today we're going to present some rarities and talk about my favorite version, my favorite adaptation of 1984. So let's just jump right in. Now, first of all, if you enjoyed the Edmund O'Brien version, which had an ending that was in keeping with the original ending of the novel, you should know that the film had two different endings, a happy ending, happy-ish ending, and an ending that was true to the book. The version that was released in America was the ending that was true to the book, where Winston's spirit is crushed, and he gives up Julia, and he loves Big Brother at the end, etc. But in England, they showed it with a happier ending, which by then, of course, George L. Orwell was deceased, and his widow hated this ending. And it's very difficult to find this ending. And fortunately, we've tracked down a version in the German release of the film that has the happy ending, but it's in German. But I'll basically tell you what it says. Essentially, Winston Smith is defeated, is broken. Then he sees a broadcast where they're saying, "Long live Big Brother," and he sees the poster of Big Brother and starts yelling at it, "Down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother." And Julia hears him yelling this, and he's shot and killed by the soldiers, and then she runs up to Winston and dies, and is reaching for his hand as she dies. And that's the happy ending. So, but the point being that neither of them were ultimately broken by the torture that love did prevail in the end, and truth did. So here is in German that ending for you to see, and you can decide which version you like best, and then we'll come back and share some other interesting 1984 rarities.
Julia.
Wir bringen Ihnen den neuesten Bericht von der afrikanischen Front. Das geniale Umfassungsmanöver, das ausschließlich vom großen Bruder geplant wurde, war von Erfolg gekrönt. Wir konnten uns rechtzeitig vom Feind absetzen und vorbereitete Stellungen beziehen. Die feindlichen Horden sind in voller Flucht vor unserer ruhmreichen Armee. Sie sind völlig demoralisiert und kommen für einen ernsthaften Widerstand kaum noch in Frage. Lang lebe der große Bruder! Lang lebe der große Bruder! Nieder mit dem großen Bruder! Er ist der Feind! Nieder mit dem großen Bruder! 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 Nieder mit dem großen Bruder!
So I hope you enjoyed that interesting and very different ending to 1984. And now we move into the actual year 1984, and there were three very notable contributions to adaptations of 1984 that were shot in 1984. And the first one, interestingly enough, was not a film, radio, or TV adaptation of the novel. It was rather a riff on the novel. And Apple decided it was going to introduce the Macintosh in 1984, and that to do that, they would have a commercial commenting on Orwell's book and counterpointing it with a 1984 that would have the Macintosh released in it. And they hired Ridley Scott to direct that commercial, which showed at the Super Bowl. And it was a revolutionary commercial. It had a huge impact. Ridley Scott had already directed Alien and Blade Runner. He'd done Blade Runner in 1982, and this is 84. And this kind of gives you an idea of what a film of 1984 might have looked like if Ridley Scott had directed it. So here it is in its entirety, the terrific 1984 Apple Macintosh Super Bowl commercial.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests, obeying contradictory reports. Our unification of the laws is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
I hope you enjoyed that. I think it's a terrific, terrific commercial, and really very memorable, very distinctive. But at the same time, there was actually a version of 1984 that was directed and released in 1984. It's this one. This is the Criterion disc of Michael Radford's 1984, starring John Hurt, Richard Burton, and Cyril Cusack. Now, interestingly enough, Cyril Cusack had played the antagonist in the Francois Truffaut's version of Fahrenheit 451. He was chief, and so there's a resonance to that. I think one of the reasons they cast him in this version of 1984 was kind of riffing off that version of Fahrenheit 451. And John Hurt is terrific in this version. He's probably the ideal Winston Smith. He was 43 years old, but looks much older at this point. He was a heavy drinker. Additionally, Richard Burton was in it. This was Burton's last film, and although he couldn't remember lines, he still turns in a really, really solid performance. And it's visually extremely distinctive. But there again, as we talked about with the Edmund O'Brien 1984, there are two different versions of this film as well. So first of all, let's look at a trailer of 1984, the John Hurt 1984, that features an orchestral score. So that was the version that has the orchestral score that seems very fitting for such a dark and dystopic vision of what would have at that point been an alternate present, because 1984 had moved from being predictive of the future to essentially being a parallel Earth story. But during this time, the studios were having some difficulties financially. They were kind of flailing about trying to find ways to increase profits from movies, and a big profit element was like the hit single or the companion soundtrack. And one of the things that they would do with Ridley Scott's Legend was it originally had a score by Jerry Goldsmith, a very fine orchestral score, but then they threw that out and put in a score by Tangerine Dream, a rock band. And so that's what they decided they would do with 1984. And so the orchestral score was replaced by a rock and roll score by the Eurythmics, a very popular band at the time. Now, I really rather like the Eurythmics, and I like this score, but it's rather odd with this film, because and so what I'll do is I'll show you the alternative trailer for 1984 featuring the Eurythmics score.
The world we are preparing, Winston, is a constant victory, a constant triumph. You are beginning to accept it. You'll soon welcome it. And finally, become part of it.
In 1949, George Orwell had a vision of the future. Today, that vision is still a best-selling novel, and his prophecy remains as terrifying as ever.
If you want a vision of the future, Winston, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
A future where freedom becomes slavery, where privacy is forbidden, the past forgotten, and where living people simply vanish. Yet one man and one woman dare to love.
Can you get Sunday afternoon off?
Yes.
Take this.
Everyone knows. The thing that is in room 101 is the worst thing in the world.
We can't get inside you. We can't get to your heart.
John Hurt, Susanna Hamilton, Cyril Cusack, and Richard Burton in the crowning role of his career.
What are your true feelings towards Big Brother?
I hate him.
You must love him. It's not enough to obey him. You must love him.
The film of the book of the year. George Orwell's 1984.
Very different from the other trailer. For one thing, the kids, instead of singing some anthem to Big Brother, are here singing Sex Crime. Not a bad thing, but an odd thing. But the cool part is that this Criterion disc of 1984 has you can watch it with either score. And again, there's the thing about the Eurythmics is it's very distinctive. Annie Lennox is quite dynamic, and they're trying to write songs that are fitting with these themes. So it isn't that they're doing something totally uninformed, but it's just that the music is very odd next to the visuals, whereas the orchestral score is much more the kind of score you would put on a film like that. But and so this movie came out, and it was well reviewed, but it wasn't a barn burner in terms of box office. But there's another film being shot that same year that is my favorite adaptation of 1984, although it is not generally viewed as a version of 1984, and that is Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Now, Terry Gilliam had been an animator who had worked extensively with Monty Python. He had directed Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He directed part of Monty Python's Meaning of Life. He was very distinctive. He directed Jabberwocky, and he ultimately became a very notable director with films like The Fisher King and 12 Monkeys. But Brazil, Universal approached him. Arnon Milchan was a producer who wanted to work with Terry Gilliam. They hit it off at Cannes, and they decided to do this movie. Now, the reason I like this version is because, for me, 1984 has been very, very grim, very gray, very depressing. And the humor and visual sense, terrific visual sense that Terry Gilliam brings to this movie, although it's not overtly credited as an adaptation of 1984, it clearly is, because Jonathan Pryce plays a petty bureaucrat who works at the Ministry of Information in a totalitarian society. He falls in love and has a romance with sort of his dream girl, and ultimately he's captured and tortured and his mind is broken. So it is the same story, but in a very, very different coat. And it stars the wonderful Jonathan Pryce, who we would later see in such things as Miss Saigon. He was in Ray Bradbury's film Something Wicked This Way Comes. He was in Game of Thrones most recently. He's a terrific actor. It also has Robert De Niro coming directly off King of Comedy, which Arnon Milchan also produced and helped finance. And it has Bob Hoskins, who many of you will recognize from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And again, this film had enormous difficulties. There's a book about the making of this film that talks about that, because Universal was the American studio that released it here in America, and Fox had the right to release it overseas. So Terry Gilliam turned in a version of the film that was like almost 2.5 hours, and 2 hours 20 minutes, and it had a very, very dark ending. Visually brilliant, many incredible sequences, and it was released by Fox in Europe, and it was very well received, and that was his vision of the film. But meanwhile, Universal screened it, did test screenings here, and it did very badly. So they decided, Sid Sheinberg, who was the head of Universal at the time, who had been a mentor to Steven Spielberg, he decided to basically recut it. He asked Terry Gilliam to cut it down and give it a happy ending, which Terry Gilliam refused to do. So Sid Sheinberg took it upon himself to cut this down to a little more than 90 minutes and give it a happy ending. And so here's Universal's trailer for their version of the film, which was released here in America.
Do you wake from your finest fantasy only to return to your daily nightmare? Is your mother about to look younger than you do? Does the woman of your dreams,
I love you. In my dreams, I love you.
still have a few doubts? Then it's time to take a stand. To break out of your dull, humdrum life and into Brazil.
You're so pleased you could make it right this way.
It's about flights of fantasy and the nightmare of reality.
We're all in this together.
Terrorist bombings.
I don't think it involves anything unsavory.
You trust me, Jack?
And late night shopping. True love.
You don't trust me?
Trust you? Trust you? The man who hijacks my truck, loses me my job, has every security man in town looking for me? Of course I trust you.
I was only trying to help.
Yeah.
And creative plumbing.
There's your problem. Can you fix it? No, I can't.
From Terry Gilliam, director of Time Bandits, Jonathan Pryce.
Sam, what are we going to do with you?
Robert De Niro.
I came into this game for the action, the excitement. Go anywhere, travel light, get in, get out, wherever there's trouble, a man alone.
Katherine Hellman. And Michael Palin.
We've always been close, haven't we?
Yes, Jack?
Until this all blows over, just stay away from me.
Brazil. It's only a state of mind.
We're all in it together, kid.
So that was Universal's view, presenting it as kind of this happy kind of escapist romp kind of film. But you can also see, by the way, comparing that trailer with the trailer of the Michael Radford 1984, you can see that it actually has a very similar, though more surrealistic design aesthetic. The cubicles that the guys work in, that kind of stuff, very similar. But now, Fox, as I mentioned, even before the American release, Fox released the real version, the complete version, the Terry Gilliam version in Europe. And here's how they presented that in their trailer, where you can see it starts very lighthearted and with kind of the happy ending direction, then takes a dark turn for the rest of the trailer. So here's Fox's trailer for the uncut version that Terry Gilliam very much preferred.
The rules of the game are laid down. We all have to play by them.
Look at you, Sam. Whatever happened to you?
An empty desk is an efficient desk.
Let a friend tell you. Your life is going wrong.
Now shape up!
Do cooperate. Think of your mother.
Has anybody seen Sam Lowry?
Sam, it's time for you to grow up and accept responsibility.
You'll never get anywhere in a suit like that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sam, what are we going to do with you?
You must have hopes, wishes, dreams.
No, nothing. Not even dreams.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I want. You won't believe this. I know it's going to sound incredible, but I've been dreaming about you. I mean, I love you. In my dreams, I love you.
Close, haven't we?
Yes, Jack?
Well, until this all blows over, just stay away from me.
Fortunately, Terry Gilliam's version prevailed. This, again, is the Criterion disc. I highly recommend both of these Criterion discs because you can watch the version the filmmakers intended. You can really see how these films were made. Both made in England, both made at industrial facilities, all sorts of stuff. Both in their own way singular and worthwhile. But again, in Brazil, Jonathan Pryce and the visual humor and the jokes and it brings a levity and a lightness that offsets the incredible darkness of the story. But they are the same story told in different ways. And Jonathan Pryce makes a great Winston Smith. And, so again, these are the multiple versions of 1984. Orwell, I think, would have been proud to know that his work has had such a tremendous impact and such a lasting impact. There'll be more versions of 1984 to come. There was a stage version recently that was very well received, and there will undoubtedly be more to come in the future because We're not, sadly, we're not free of the clutch of the totalitarian state, nor mind control, nor thought control, or any of that, or the loss of privacy. So that's it for now. Much more to come. One of the things I'm looking to do is to spread the impact of Mr. Sci-Fi. I notice that there are other science fiction sites that get thousands or hundreds of thousands of hits each time. And so if you are an expert in how to increase the number of people who watch these videos, I'm very proud of what we present. I'm very proud of the information we convey. So feel free to get in touch with me, markzickery@gmail.com, if you'd like to help. We're moving along on Space Command and Sweet Haven and the book and all sorts of stuff. Lots to come in the days to come. But for now, I'm really glad that we could spend a week together examining all of these wonderful versions of 1984. A lot of heart went into them. A lot of great talent went into them. None of them were pieces of crap. All of them were heartfelt, serious, and made a mark. So that's about it for now. We'll talk to you again very soon, and if you want to throw some money our way via Patreon or contribute to the Kickstarter campaign we're about to have, or buy a share in Space Command, it all helps us move forward with all this this wonderful work we're doing. So thank you very much, and we'll talk again very soon. Bye, guys.